What if there was a perfect digital copy of you out there? What if there was a perfect digital copy of you out there? You know, one that could speak in your voice, adopt your mannerisms, and even argue from your point of view. Now, what if you didn't create it and you had absolutely no control over it? Now, this isn't science fiction anymore. It's the central idea behind a thought-provoking article by Faisal titled The AI Doppelgänger Dilemma, and it's the focus of our discussion today. Now, Faisal, you argue that we're on the verge of a new kind of identity crisis, and you're not talking about simple deepfakes or stolen credit card numbers. What you're actually describing is AI doppelgangers. So sophisticated, interactive digital clones of real people. And these are built by AI trained on our vast public footprints of photos, videos, and writings. Now, the article that you wrote, it lays out a really stark reality, namely that the technology to create these digital twins, as we might say, it is rapidly advancing. But our laws and ethics are somewhat stuck in the past. Now, legal concepts like the right of publicity, these were designed to protect a static image or a name, not really a dynamic, interactive replica of a persona or a person's entire being. Now, the one question that we have is, and I'm sure there's many more questions that we will have, is this really a profound psychological violation? Let's find out. So welcome to Convergence. I'm Lauren Hoque Zafer from Zurich.
And I'm Faisal Hoque from Stanford, Connecticut.
Convergence is a series dedicated to exploring the pivotal intersections of technology, business, and leadership. Faisal, the one word or two words that we've introduced at the start of this episode is AI doppelganger. What is an AI doppelganger?
It's really manifestation of you without having any knowledge of you having any knowledge of that manifestation. It's the digital manifestation of you as a person, but you had nothing to do with it. So I know we have all seen these funny videos of Trump and Zelensky and Biden doing funny things and whatnot, and they're being caricatured. You know, it's like a fun thing and we all get hooked to it and swiping it all day long. But imagine now more on a serious tone when there was a few weeks back, our Secretary of State had a fake video message got distributed all over the world. Imagine now creeping to regular people, not famous personality, regular people. Imagine your child's picture that he had posted on Instagram, Facebook, or whatnot. They're now talking and having a persona, a digital persona. So that creates a whole series of issues, right? I mean, there's identity theft, legal issues, protection, etc., etc. That's really the theory behind the doppelganger effect of AI.
So I think the question I want to ask there is that if someone were sort of confronted with this word for the first time, you've given the explanation of maybe images or shorts or videos that are publicly accessible that we might identify as, okay, well, that's actually not Putin, it's not Trump, it's not Zelensky, because you can see that there's these small nuances that might indicate that it is a replication of what is maybe personified through accessible images or videos on the internet. One thing that when people are confronted with this doppelganger term, it is possible that one might think that it's a synonym for digital twin. Is it a synonym for digital twin, or is it something completely different? And if it's not a synonym, then what is the difference between the doppelganger and the digital twin?
It's a little bit of both in the sense that some is you are creating yourself, right? Because for whatever reason, a lot of people are creating their own digital personality or digital twin. You actually see now being used by a lot of marketeer, whereby they are created by the creator so that they can create videos that are more effective. It's not like you and I talking right now. You know, we write a script and we have our digital persona and it's auto-generated, right? Let's say we're doing this for our own marketing purposes. The other element to it is that you are somewhat known person, you have no idea, but somebody else taken that and created that without even knowing that. So both cases are true. Both scenario is true. Identity recreation and the doppelganger dilemma is that identity recreation creates psychological, legal, and social havoc. And my argument is it absolutely does, because I don't want my words to be said by somebody else, even though it looks like me, acts like me, and has my personality. It's just not acceptable to me personally. It may be acceptable to other people. So I don't create as a writer, author, talker, whatever you want to call it, podcaster. I want to create my authentic voice and my authentic image and my authentic distribution. I don't want my persona to be stolen by anybody, myself or anybody else.
Sure. I mean, I don't think anyone wants their persona to be stolen, but also there's the other side of the coin. If you look at the actual, maybe not willingness, but you've also given permission by engaging with a digital world for that to be created. Everything that you interact with on a daily basis. There's the simple example of the GPS on your phone. So it gives a digital mapping of where you go, the apps that you're accessing, the types of clothing, cosmetics that you're ordering, the music that you're listening to, when you go to the gym. There's so much that's already mapped by your willingness to share and interact with this digital device. So in that sense, where's the sort of line that's drawn between, the boundary? If you're entering into that sort of environment, where is the parameter around, well, if your data is public, is your identity also public property as well?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's complex, but it's also simple in my mind, because simple in the sense that I may be doing a lot of things in public, and that's why they call public and private, right? But at certain point, some things are private, right? I don't have my camera on 7x2. I may choose to do that, but most people don't have their camera on 7x24 so that the whole public can come and look into your house and your activity and that sort of a thing. As it is very overwhelmingly pervasive, whereby anything I type, anything I put, anything I search for, it's now the internet and cookies and other stuff is following me around 7x24. But even with that, there's a fine line, right? So now what's happening is that line being crossed. And in the sense that, for example, forget about the video and audio. A simple thing, let's say I post a picture of my child, I'm walking around, and let's say it's a beautiful picture. Now, 1,000 people takes that picture and, they're doing it innocently and maybe without having any type of a callous intention or whatever, sharing a beautiful picture. But I may not want my child and my picture to be all over. I didn't give permission to anybody to do that, but you're doing it anyway for your own personal satisfaction, entertainment, whatever the case may be. This is where the line gets. Now, you could say the same thing about voice, same thing about video. And then you're saying, okay, we're going one step farther because we have AI, where we can take a video, a past video or past voice, an image, and create a derivative out of that source material, right? That now gets to a whole different violation because you're impersonating, right? You're literally impersonating. And that cannot be the right. In my mind, that cannot be right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we could go into a discussion about what could be right and what couldn't be right, but let's also look at real life examples where that actually happens, where it's used for commercialization. So as we know, there's a lot of use cases where digital twins or AI doppelgangers are on the market, accessible, and used in a lot of institutions and organizations. You're talking about therapy bots, you're talking about stimulators, you're also talking about maybe legacy avatars. There's certain states, I know in America, that have now brought in legalities, vetoes that you've talked about, as to where there is stronger permissioning and also the requirement for permissioning for these sort of use cases to be in lift, that they can actually take place and voice can be replicated, and there is an AI doppelganger that is accessible to the public. Do you think that this should be implemented from what I'm hearing, like globally? Do you think that there should be stronger laws around what is permitted when it comes to things like identity theft, voice replication, the replication of your digital identity in different directions?
100%. Look, I mean, places, I mean, US is because we have 50 plus states and we have different laws in different states. And at a federal level, we don't have any kind of a law that has not, that is there yet to do these kind of identity protection at a broader scale. And we looked at this during the days of social media evolved, and we have privacy law and some protection and whatnot, but bullying and etc. But it's still not that strong enough. The Finland and Denmark is trying to do other things in the sense that there is a copyrighted image copyright of each person's face, and their identity is copyrighted by them. And there's also Denmark, I forgot, doing a lot of digital education around the usage of this kind of assets, if you want to call them assets. I think it's a multifold issues. If you are going to be, let's say I create my own digital persona and digital twin, and I'm using it for my own promotion or propaganda, whatever the case may be, then I have to notify the audience that this is a digital twin. It's not me. So that distinction must be there. Usage by other people has to be abided by some sort of a legal structure. Imagine if your spouse, which is not your spouse, but looks like your spouse, calls you up with a video chat and tells you that your child needs to be picked up from the kindergarten, and it's completely false. I mean, there are already a lot of use cases that are happening that people are using it for nefarious purposes that should not be used.
And it's always the case that when it is used for nefarious purposes, that we become more aware of the actual possibilities to do things like this. Do you think, though, that we're at the stage from a technology perspective? So the article that you wrote positions AI doppelgangers as more than just advanced deepfakes. It is something, and we could go again into the dimension of what makes us human and if that can be replicated by technology. This technology per se represents like a fundamental shift from traditional identity theft. It moves from theft of data, like, for example, a social security number, to the appropriation, as you've mentioned, of a persona of their entire narrative and interactive essence. But do you think that the technology is there to really be able to say that, yeah, sure, I believe that it can take a person's entire narrative and mimic them?
So I think technology is already there to create short burst and generative way, right? What I mean by that, I mean, like you said, we just digressed our conversation. It's natural, right? Imagine if we didn't want to do that, and we could easily have our digital twin and we can script our conversation and it'll come out perfect, right? It will not have the same level of imperfection. It will not have the same level of emotional things that we may be feeling as we conversing, but it will be perfect, right? So why does that matter? Well, I think there's a psychological element to it, and actually that's why I wrote this in Psychology Today, is that, a society that's already so infatuated with perfection, we're going to start our authentic self lesser and lesser. And these digital twins that are generated are more interesting or perfect. And so in the process of doing that, even if we are creating ourselves, our digital twin, in the process of doing that, I think we're going to lose our authenticity. So there's that psychological, emotional, and societal effect to it, aside from the digital crime or the other type of nefarious activities that can happen from this technology. Technology is definitely not there 100%, but given another 3 years, it will get to the point whereby you won't be able to detect whether it's real or not at all. Now you can kind of detect that it's not real, right? But sooner or later, you will not be able to detect. Let me give you one other complete sci-fi scenario, because we're already talking about humanoid robot. So imagine now you have this digital twin, which is mostly virtual, embedded into a humanoid robot that looks like you. So now you've really manifested a physical self of you. You see this in sci-fi movies, but it is entirely in the realm of possibility within the next 5 years, 6 years time frame, or maybe even sooner.
But then that leads me, and I agree with a lot of the points you've mentioned, and I also personally believe that the technology is not there yet. I do think that there's certain elements, as you've mentioned, that, for me, AI, it can stimulate patterns. It's about pattern detection, pattern generation, pattern identification, but I'm not necessarily 100% convinced that it can actually shape you. And the reason is, we've discussed this on previous episodes, is that humanity and being human is a sort of unique composition in itself. And if you were just to sort of segment it into 3 different sections, being like your identity blending of the mental, the physical, and the spiritual, all of those things are also shaped by memory.
Yeah.
And that's something for me that you cannot create an identity, a digital twin fully based on just, data, a lot of data, emails, messages, GPS, location, identification. So I do think that the tech still needs to come there. Going back to your point, it's then as they do become more sophisticated, which they will, and you know that, they could potentially act in our behalf, in our name, without our control, as we've been discussing. So how does this potential for like a post-authentic reality force us to really redefine what personal autonomy means in a digital context? I think that's a really important question, Faisal.
100%. And, we may not, to your point, nothing can create, and this is a little bit of spiritual and philosophical. Human beings has a soul, however you want to define soul as, right? You can't take that is unique for each person, right? So it's hard to bottle that soul into something that's mimicking you. It's just because it's evolved, soul evolves, right? But there's an argument to be had, because you can mimic empathy, you can mimic feelings, and you can have a lot of different mannerism that you can almost replicate, right? You can imagine, maybe you don't even have to go as far as like super intelligence, meaning AGI type of artificial intelligence, meaning the general intelligence type of technology that we foresee coming in next 8-10 years. If you look at the auto evolving AI that self-evolves, which I recently wrote an article about self-evolving AI versus the super intelligent AI, AGI. Self-evolving AI could completely take over and create a different personality than you are. So that could create a whole lot of issues, because your digital tool will show up, which you have no control over, even if you're the creator, or somebody is manipulating it to the point where it's not at all you, and it's a machine has taken over the control. You can only imagine a scenario where the war gets started, feud gets started in families, friends are no longer friends because of this nefarious activity done, either triggered by human beings or because the machine has gone array.
And the scary thing is that you can imagine that happening. It's
Oh,
not,
yes.
and I'm sure that everyone that's listening and watching is also like, yeah, I've come across this. Fortunately, I've never been in a situation like that. up until now, but I have encountered, possibilities of like address fraud and things like that. So in that sense,
Actually, Lauren, I can give you a personal example. Many years ago, before blogging started, I was a very private CEO and I had very little social presence, right? And I just had my first book out. I didn't even have a personal website. Somebody started a blog by my name and started posting blogs that impersonated me. We had to notify the legal authorities and take a pretty big investigative initiative to nail down who it was and stop that. Right. So those stuff has and it was very chaotic because it was creating a it's not me, so it's not my brand, and it had a business implication and personal implication. That was almost 30 years ago. And now imagine where the technology has come. So this will happen more and more.
and this is happening. I mean, the scary thing as well, and we don't want to be pessimistic and all doom and gloom in this episode, because there's also, looking at the alternative where you can use digital twins or AI doppelgangers for commercialization purposes in a very positive way. But if we stay for a minute on the sort of pessimistic side, you can see that it does cause psychological implications. It could cause commercial implications, business implications, as you've highlighted. But it's also the situation of, the unfortunate balances of power as well, of people that are not in a position to essentially prove that this is not them. And if you look at the development of generative AI as an example, it's generative AI where you can go to any language model that's publicly accessible and you can prompt it through prompt engineering to act like someone that you want to impersonate.
Sure.
So I suppose it's a little bit about what you've also spoken about, this global enforceability challenge. In a borderless, or almost borderless digital world, how would you advise that, legal systems adapt to this sort of development?
I think there's like a threefold responsibility, right? One is that the government has to have legal legislative infrastructure that protects the citizens from being taken advantage of, right? So this is really taking advantage of people, no matter how you look at it. It's not just you being stolen, but it's also you being duped, right? Somebody shows up and acts as let's say, like it happened with Marco Rubio. He's the Secretary of State and he's sending out messages and it's not him, right? So somebody's duping other people, manipulating them with a different personality. So there has to be that legal infrastructure that does that. Second is that there are responsibility by the creator and the user of this technology that are large enterprises or businesses, right? So it's like drugs, right? You can create a drug and put it in the market, and you haven't really done enough work in terms of harmful effect of the drug. We should have the same kind of regulation on the technology companies and the businesses that are creating, distributing this kind of technology, right? So there's the second element of it. Third element of it is actually the individual, right? So you as an individual has the responsibility to safeguard you as an asset, right? In terms of what you post, what you share, what you're looking at, etc., but also what you believe, right? Just because you're seeing something, unfortunately, now you have to be very vigilant to make sure that what you're seeing is actually authentic, right? So, and you have to go after if something is not authentic, whether that's your thing, you have been stolen, or somebody's feeding you that's something that's not real, right? So in both cases, you have to be vigilant, right? So combination of those three, and these are in that article I did talk about the necessity of a digital literacy, level literacy requirement that's unprecedented, right? And things are changing way too fast. So you have to combine all those elements if we want to have any chance of preventing this before it becomes truly a pandemic, right? Just like a drug addiction is a pandemic, this could easily become a pandemic, just like we've seen in COVID or other type of pandemic. This would be it. digital pandemic.
No, 100%. I think we need to move towards like a new definition of digital personahood, and also making sure, as you said, that everyone's educated around how to protect that individual digital personification identity online. So this, for me, has been a fascinating discussion. I think that it's one of the ones that really deserves the spotlight and limelight.
Yeah, 100%, because we have to protect ourselves. We have to protect, more importantly, we have to protect our next generation, especially the children, right? They could be easily manipulated and taken advantage of. The urgency on this couldn't be more urgent. Every single one of us should be very much aware of it and try to play a role in prevention of this getting out of control.
So I think that one place that our viewers and listeners can certainly start with is the article that you've written on the AI Doppelgänger Dilemma for Psychology Today. And that's accessible. And I think it would be a great starting place to really understand that, AI clones do mimic you. They're threatening your possible identity. The laws aren't essentially keeping up with this, and we do need a veto and clear consent rules to protect our digital selves, and you also need that to protect your digital selves. Another good piece of source of information is just to get an idea of the type of laws that could possibly also be put in place globally is some of the AI-related laws that were introduced. As an example, in California, there's 18 that relate to privacy, data protection, transparency, and AI protection against any AI-generated harmful content, not human content, harmful content. And also, integrity in how this AI education, AI integration into sectors, both public and private, needs to be addressed and certainly understood. One thing, Faisal, before we end, who owns your digital ghost?
My personal digital ghost. I don't know.
I'm trying to make it light.
I think we should all own our own digital ghost, because digital ghost is basically a derivative of who you are, right? So just like that Denmark law making everybody's face as a copyrighted image, because each face are unique, right? I mean, each one of us fortunately still have unique DNA. So we should own our ghost, not somebody else. I don't know who owns my ghost, but I claim that my ghost is mine.
Okay, great. Thanks for being with us today on this episode of Convergence. You can subscribe on Spotify or YouTube. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us.